G'day. So it's nearly high noon, and I'm going to hold this thing now because it's fallen off so many times before. I'm continuing on from yesterday's broadcast. Yesterday was the 13th of December 2023, and today's the 14th. So it's 9 days before my 53rd birthday. So I missed the train back to Wollongong because after midnight there's not one till 4:30am. And being that I've got half a brain cell, I walk through the tunnel to George Street. And I sit on a park bench and I notice there are a lot of privately hired local police who are not police. They've just got high-vis wear on them. I give no apologies for trying to cling to some vestige of vanity. Yeah. At least as one ages, one can try to do what a makeup artist would do. So to continue on from the previous broadcast, I met a woman called Susan Smith, aboriginal. So what are the odds of being able to find Susan Smith after the thing I never got to tell you in the previous broadcast, which was that after I was sitting at 3am in the full view of these semi-privatised cops wandering around Central Station in Sydney, and the next train to Wollongong wasn't till 4:30. And so I'm sitting on the road, it's called Lee Street, and it intersects up to Broadway in Sydney, Australia. And I'm there for a goodly long while. And then suddenly emerges, like I didn't even see her, and like, I consider myself fairly sharp for several reasons. I've never missed a beat, just like Crobbers. I never missed a beat. Even when he was off his tits on everything. He never missed a beat in 35 years of international touring, and he never missed a beat on a 90-channel mixing desk for Nick Cave, and he never missed a beat. And everybody I love, Dave Ray, despite the things that people you love inflict on you, what I love about people, what makes them my friends in my heart over my now nearly gone life, is that they're sharp as tacks. So it was rather weird that incoming, this woman suddenly beside me. She's a stunning Aboriginal woman, very, very black, and sits down beside me and said, "Oh, can I sit beside you?" And I said, "Of course." I'm on a park bench on the Broadway side of Central Station in Sydney, Central Train Station in Sydney last night. We introduce ourselves. I tell her my name, and she says, "I'm Susan Smith, but they call me Maxine." Now, Sharon O'Neill, the great Kiwi, the great New Zealand songwriter, who, because I'm so husky, because I didn't warm up, as explained in prior videos, despite pretending I'm a professional singer, I actually theoretically am. Actually, by fact. I didn't warm up, so I blew my voice. She sits down beside me. It's about 2:30 or 3am by this stage, and the last train out of Sydney's already gone. So that last train's gone, and I'm waiting for the Wollongong. And she sits beside me and she's scared. She's looking around while she's saying, "Can I sit with you?" And she's like checking out the left and checking over there and checking out, surveying. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No, no, no." She's stunning. Like, what? Like, not like that matters, right? But the point of it is that there's also like I'm going to stop saying like, as I teach to my children, or I try to whenever I get the scant opportunity to speak to them on the phone. Don't say like, it's not, it is or it isn't, or it's an approximation. Like is an approximation, okay? It either is or it isn't, or it's an approximation, so don't pike out. So she doesn't she has actual scars all over her face. And later on that morning in Sydney Airport, which used to be Charles Kingsford Smith Airport, which used to be Macquarie Bank Airport, which is now Alan Joyce, who fucked off with a lot of money when he shouldn't have, and he should be under detention and retention of his proceeds of crime, because he took an awful lot of money from Scott Morrison's previous Liberal National Party government onto his gross, earnings sheet. And then because his performance-based contract was rated on how much money he earned, a straight transfer. This, international viewers, if you happen to be viewing from anywhere that's not Australia, this is part of the magnificent shitfuckery of Australia. It's that this prick, Alan Joyce, he's totally gay and totally married, and he was actually on a Mardi Gras float with his glitter balls hanging out, which is fantastic because that's exactly what you should be allowed to do as the CEO of a major first world democracy. You should be able to have do your glitter balls hang out? Do your glitter balls hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Will you take our taxpayer money and then squander it down the dunny? Do your glitter balls hang low? Well, yes, they did. He took money. It was put on the spreadsheet of Qantas. Qantas is what once was, but is not anymore due to privatisation. The Queensland Qantas Q and a Northern Territory NT Air Service Qantas. So Alan Joyce and his glitter balls disappear off into the distance because the spreadsheet for the way he left the company was looking tops. And of course his KPIs, his key performance indicators, are such that he gets paid $24 million a year or thereabouts. And they're going to, Labor has still not committed to stage 3 tax cuts, by the way. So glitter balls pisses off with a handsome payout based on taxpayer funds topping up the spreadsheet under COVID-19 border closures, in which the previous Conservative Christian government of Australia under Scott Morrison as the Prime Minister, the so-called Liberal National Party coalition, when they're not Liberal at all, they're Christian Conservative fuckwits. Come at me, fuckers. I'll do you. Don't try and take me, because I can prove that that's not defamation. I can prove that any reasonable person would concur with that summation of you. So Alan Joyce and his glitter balls take off with a hefty princely sum of money, because part of the balance sheet of Qantas on which he gets paid for his KPIs, his key performance indicators, are how much money he earned. But a lot of the money that he earned was actually paid under the previous Liberal National Party coalition government into the coffers of Qantas, the airline, as subsidiary payments. Is that the correct term? They get paid in because Scott Morrison's government says, well, it's COVID, no one can work, there's border closures, there's lockdowns, we're going to pay you. Not if you're a contractor, by the way. No. All right? G'day, Matt Crosby. G'day, the best sound engineer on earth. You're not going to get paid. But businesses like Harvey Norman and Qantas will. And so there's this massive transfer in Australia if you're from overseas or if you're from Australia and you don't bother to educate yourself with what's going on here. This massive transfer of public money through tax goes over to this semi-privatised entity, which is an airline service called Qantas. And so the CEO, Alan Joyce, from Ireland, a lovely little Irish ferry. He ferries off. Alan Jones ferries off with his taxpayer money that the previous federal regime under Scott Morrison, the so-called Liberal National Party, but they're not Liberal, they're conservative Christians who believe that God exists and man lives in the sky with a cock and is running the show. He takes off based on his KPIs, his key performance indicators. He takes off with a lot of loot, a lot of public money loot. Now, I was going somewhere with that because very unfortunately, and this call goes out to anyone in South Australia, and South Australia has just called for and won a royal commission today into what they call domestic violence, but I've told you a million times before, or thereabouts, that's an embellishment, is the murder of the murder by men of women and their children. It's not domestic violence, it's 97% male murder of women and children. And there were 6 women murdered in South Australia alone in the last month, and so they've won a royal commission, but not like that is going to do shit. Sorry to break it to you, emboldened South Australia, who were on ABC News this morning. Whilst your project is incredible and you've achieved much, we had the Banking Royal Commission for $220 million only a few years ago. And these pricks all walked away with their handsome lawyers' fees and their commissioners' fees. And all they did was tut the CBA, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, for accidentally charging dead people insurance money that was being automatically deducted each month out of their bank accounts. And that's the best they did. They didn't investigate why Australia's got the highest credit card rates on the planet of 22%, or why if you're a pensioner, you still have to pay $5 account keeping fees, even though the money in your account is used on the short-term money market to be played and had money made by even the CBA, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, which used to be owned by Australian people. So, to get back to the more interesting points, an Aboriginal woman from South Australia, which is why it's so deeply pertinent, that South Australia. I mean, you can't make the timing up. It's deeply relevant to me, as it was always going to be, but most definitely because yesterday morning at 3 a.m, an Aboriginal woman from South Australia, her name is Suzanne Smith, and as I told you at the top of this broadcast, and I said, I said, what's your real name? Because she's very black, she's very beautiful, high cheekbones, scarred and smashed. She told me later that her femur was smashed, that her body had been smashed. Aboriginal men are violent to women, as are white men, as are Islamic men, as are Pakistani, and as are every colour. every stripe. Particularly Aboriginal women in Australia, beaten to the shit, broken teeth, a boomerang scar on her cheek. She told me despondently as she stared off to the distance at about 7 a.m. in the airport of Sydney yesterday morning that her femur had been broken, that her face had been smashed in. I'll catch up with the story. It should rhyme with glory. It should rhyme with how people rise up to fully participate in life without any threat of harm and to exploit their musicality and their scientistic impulses and their community and their families. It should be that we are living in a world of that. And imagine, as John Lennon sang, before some fuckwit shot him, but they still can't manage to shoot Trump. Imagine what the world would be if Israel, the biggest now, alas, apart from my love for them all my life, they are now the most despicable war criminals on earth. Imagine what the world would be if we actually learned from history. Imagine what this woman's life would be, free from violence. So Suzanne, I said, what's your real name? To get back to the point, as she approached me on a park bench outside of Central Station. I'm sure there's CCTV footage that will prove this if you think I'm lying. And I'm waiting for the last train that I missed back to Wollongong. The next one's not till 4:30 on the morning of Tuesday/Wednesday this week, 12th, 13th of December. Sorry, 13th, 14th of December, 2023. For the record, Your Honour. And I notice she has no shoes. And I say, what's your real name in language? And so she tells me where she's from, but she says her official name in white people's culture is Suzanne Maxine Smith. And I can't help but breaking into the Sharon song of Maxine. And I can't do it because I'm too raspy, like I said yesterday. And I'm the only one. Great song, like one of the greatest songs in the Anzac songbook, which I intend to travel around the world before I die. And I will. There's Sharon O'Neill. And I ask how old she is, and she tells me she's 29. So I'm figuring that her mother probably had heard that song, which is... She says she has 3 children. And I say, which is great. It's a well-constructed song, Maxine by Sharon O'Neill. And whoever the songwriter was, I should know that. But she's the singer, not necessarily the songwriter. So I ask her how old this Aboriginal woman from Adelaide is. And she says that she's 29. And she tells me she has 3 children, like me. She didn't know that, but I said, oh, like me. How old's your youngest? She says 3 months. I said, it's 3 a.m. Where is that child? She says, in Adelaide. And I said, why are you here sitting next to me on a park bench outside on Broadway's Sydney Central train station? And she says, he's calling me. And as she says this to me, her phone is constantly ringing. And we're talking 2:33-ish a.m. in the morning. And it didn't stop. I'm evidence for this, if you want to call me, in any situation, because I wouldn't doubt that she's going to be murdered. So I tried to save her, literally. So I was sitting there, and she kept looking, as if he was going to come at her. I said, why is he calling you? She said, well, he's the father of my 3-month-old, and I've got 2 older children who are 10. So she had her first child roughly when she was 17 or 18 or 19, because she's 29 now. And I said, so why are you here if you're from Adelaide? She said, well, he's the father of my 3-month-old, and I came up to see if we could have a relationship. But I know now, because I've met him and he's violent to me, and here he is calling me, and I could clearly see it on her phone. So this goes out to the woman who was on the ABC TV news program from 6 till 9 this morning, proudly saying that South Australia has won a Royal Commission into the murder of women, 6 in 1 month recently. And here's this woman beside me. And of course, I've told you in previous broadcasts here below on Facebook that have been migrated to YouTube at DDTV. That's DEEDEE TV Australia. Go check them out if you want, because I'm going to start to ask for money to do this full time, because I don't have any backing and this needs to be done. So she sits beside me and tells me the story, and he's constantly non-stop harassing her. It's a conflation. And so I say, she's looking around, scared he's going to turn up. I take her hand, I interlock our fingers. I'm right-handed, I'm holding it with my left, so I interlock my left hand with hers, and I promise her that if any man steps near her, I will kill them. And she looks at me like it's tough talk. And I said, no, you don't know what I've been through. My godfather, and I tell her about the murder by my godfather Warren Rogers of his wife Anne at the exact moment that she went to leave him, which is textbook 101, exactly when women get murdered. And I tell her about my long-term feminism when I realised at 10 years old that only boys could tell jokes and command the public space in our public school out at Bilgola Plateau, but girls couldn't say anything. And I tell her that I'm her sister, Tidas. She keeps looking around as if she's scared, so at this point I say, well, we should get out of here if you're scared, and we're going to book a ticket to back. She said, I said, why are you here? She's got no shoes on. She's got black short socks and no shoes on. I choose not to humiliate her at this point, potentially humiliate her at this point by saying, where are your shoes? Because I'm thinking, well, she's either run from him and left them behind, which is one logical conclusion, or she's been sleeping rough, in other words, homeless. Let's call a spade, and someone's knocked her shoes off, or she doesn't know how she's like. I'm not going to make a point of the fact that she's sitting there in black short socks with no shoes at this point in time. I just want to make her safe. And so I know that the bar Broadway on the corner of Parramatta Road and at Ultimo, where ironically the TV station and radio station for ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, majorly is centred in Sydney. And there's a bar called Bar Broadway, and I happen to know that it's 24 hours, and I'm needing a pee, and she's needing to get the fuck out of harm's way. So I said, look, you hold my hand, we're going there. So we go there. I said, what do you drink? She says, a Coke. And I said, is that all? Is that all you want? You feel like anything else? And she goes, no, just a Coca-Cola, please. I don't drink alcohol. So I order a vodka. And we sit at the window. And some nasty little shit. There was a really nice guy behind the bar who served us. And I said, oh, do you mind if I plug my phone in? And he said, yes. And so we go and sit at the bar just to scan the area in case there's any incoming, threat of her ex stalking her. And I go, well, how'd you get up here and why are you here? She goes, I was trying to find out whether we could have a relationship with each other and we can't. And she's 3 months. And I say, you be very careful because Australian authorities are so fucking disgusting to Aboriginal women. And you've got the worst rates of removal of your children on earth because they blame women for what men do to women. Put it on a meme, fuckers. Australian so-called democratic agencies under so-called departments of welfare blame women for what men do to them, and then they take and remove their children from them because of what men and housing unaffordability and childcare unaffordability do to them. So this guy behind the bar takes my phone. I said, could you plug it in the charger? He says, no problem. And then some jumped up little lebo, I'm going to call him that because I've grown up in Sydney, fucking Lebanese little prick comes up. He's all of 22 and with his puffed out chest, and he goes, you got to go now. And I said, sorry, why? We've just ordered our drink and sat down. We only just arrived. Aren't you still open? And he goes, yeah, but we're shutting in 10 minutes. And I said, well, with respect, that wasn't said to us when we purchased the drink, and my friend and I are in distress, so I'm just going to finish my drink and go to the toilet, and we'll take that time to leave because you don't have bar closed on the outside of your door. And he goes, do you want me to call the police? And I went, knock yourself out, you fuckwit. Because when the police turn up, if that's your best, if that's all you got. So suddenly we're two vulnerable women. I've missed my train because no state provision of transport back. She's attempted, she is suffering the attempt of murder and bashing by a man who does incessantly phone her from 3 till 5 a.m. And some jumped up little Lebanese prick. It could be a Maori, it could be an Australian, I don't care. Don't try and pretend that I'm racist because I'm not. I speak to people from the entire panoply of humanity, so you don't get to call me that. But I live in Sydney and I see how a lot of Lebanese people act, and they're not very bright. For example, which is the crucifying tragedy of, for so many years, why I particularly love Jewish people, because they contribute above and beyond on every metric to the arts and the sciences and the progression of humanity. And then you get a right-wing government under Netanyahu, who is a war criminal murdering all of Palestine. And so at this point, I'm like, wow, you guys are just like Hitler, you're fucked. And so I've had to contend in Sydney for a lot of my life, moving from Bankstown to the Northern Beaches, all around Sydney, talking to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons as a communicator and an educator. Look at my LinkedIn profile if you want, you can check it out. I've had to deal with an awful lot of people from a lot of backgrounds, and I find that the Lebanese are quite particularly often, just revolting and quite boneheaded. So this little jumped up Lebanese prick comes up to me. By the way, the most Lebanese in Australia are Christians, not Muslims. Fact. So this little boneheaded, likely Lebanese Christian comes up to me and tells me that I need to get out of here, and he's not even 25. And I said, don't speak to me like that. I've just ordered a drink and I've just sat down and my friend's in danger. Get out or I'll call the police. No. How about this? Get away from me or I'll call your manager, which I'm just about to do after this broadcast. And she goes, oh, no, police, and she's Aboriginal, so like the police are terrorists because they're terrorists to me, and they're terrorists, we have, again, like welfare agencies. We have an disgusting fucking misspend of Australian taxpayers' money on too many police, too many welfare agencies, too many white people controlling everybody else and trying to steal them for even the most minor transgressions of, logic. Sorry, not logic, of law, but mainly when the actors doing these so-called transgressions are actually just acting in accordance with logic. So she says, no, I want to go if the police are coming here. It's like, so do I. They're fucking pigs. I don't need any more problem with these fucking assholes. I I've got some stories for you, and you can see them all down here, down below on Facebook and over at YouTube. I won't bore you again. So we go over the road and we go to McDonald's, which is open 24/7 on Broadway. And of course, you can see this on CCTV footage, New South Wales Police. And because she's Aboriginal, there's a bunch of people who aren't giving us a cab. And I mean, no shit. Their cabs are pulled up with their yellow light on saying that they're available. And I knock on the doors of two of them and they see that she's Aboriginal and I'm white. And they just do what's used to be illegal when my father was a cab driver. They deny us service as women at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I look up Broadway, I cast my eye and I see a yellow light coming to the road. I hail them and they didn't look like they're going to stop. So I walk into the traffic and he stopped and I went, "Airport, you want the fee?" And put my credit card out. And he's like, "Get in." I was like, "Good." So we fuck off to Sydney Airport, proper. We get there at 4 a.m. No one's there. I sit down and it's Christmas time and I'm on a pension and I'm about to lose my house in Tasmania and I've got no inheritance. And so I pull out my credit card and I buy us 2 tickets to Adelaide because I'm going to make sure this woman gets home without being killed. Back to her 3-month-old baby. "And where is your baby?" "Oh, she's with my mother." "Well, can I ask, why are you here?" So I start asking questions as I'm buying the ticket. Because all I wanted to do initially is get her out of harm's way. So I start asking questions. "Why are you here? And where's your baby? And how were you going to get back home, by the way?" And she says, "Well, I came up because my baby's father is in Sydney. My baby is 3 months old. But it's clear that he is abusive to me and I can see all the calls coming in and she's not taking them." And I'm like, do not, no matter what you do, if there's one thing I've learnt about men, they will lie. They will murder you. The nicest guys on earth. If you go near this man again and they can see his record and you've come up here to try and make it good with him and left your baby, welfare will take your baby. Trust me, I am an educated woman, tertiary, with 3 houses and immaculate references in childcare and from Orders of Australia. Check me out at LinkedIn if you think I'm full of shit. It's all public because I'm crucifying people at this stage. I am out for absolute equality of women and vengeance on top of it. It's the least you could fucking do. Blood money. Take a scalp. Pound of flesh. So we get to the airport and for $888 at Christmas time, we're trying to get back to Adelaide and I'm on the pension. So out comes the Visa card. Suffice it to say we had 5 hours to kill until the 9:30 flight departed on Jetstar from Sydney down to Adelaide. And I said, "Do you mind, have you got anywhere for me to stay? Because I've got no money once we get there, but I'm going to get you to an agency that's looking after you." And at this point, I've given her my shoes. And I've actually taken off my shoes because I only had one pair and she had none. So I've taken off my shoes. And for the first time in my life ever, I'm walking barefoot through a public space with no shoes on in solidarity with my sister, with my titas. I'm looking because nothing's open at that stage of the morning at 4 a.m. The shops don't open until about at least 8 because that's the major traffic time for Sydney Airport, right? So there's no shoe buying shop. I can't buy a pair of thongs in the news agency, nothing. So I give her my Italian leather shoes. We sit down and talk. And I say, when we get down there, it's on condition of this. Now that I am at the airport and now that we've been waiting 3 hours, I buy her a croissant. I said, "What do you want for breakfast?" I'm holding her hand. We get cleared through security at Sydney Airport. I go over to the lift because these days my hip's sore and I don't like to take the stairs, so we take the lift downstairs to the gates and we're sent up to, if you're in Sydney Airport, you go in domestic terminal, you go right up to the gates, 50 to whatever, and if you're in, the rest, you go left. And so we're going right here, and so we get to walk through all the already just opening food shops. And I say I haven't eaten for ages, well, at least last night, since I had a pizza and gave it to half the band who played for nothing. El Rocco. No audience. Me singing. So, would you like something to eat? And she goes, yes, I want a ham cheese croissant, please. So I order her that. She said, and a Coke. Yeah, no wonder all the Aboriginal people have diabetes. Like everyone else who orders Coke. And so they don't serve Coke, so I go, well, wait here, and I go walk over to McDonald's, I buy her a Coke, I bring it back, we sit down and I eat a ham, cheese, tomato sandwich on grain, and she eats a ham, not like anyone gives a shit, she has a ham, cheese, tomato croissant. So I'm holding her hand, and I said, I won't let you go, I'm going to deliver you safely. So we then proceed to the gate, 53. And we have hours to wait. And she's a smoker, of course. So she takes us, I'm going to have a cigarette. And I'm like, oh, okay, good luck with that. Do you know where to go around here? And she goes, yeah. So she goes outside Sydney Airport. She comes back and she sits down again. And we're sitting beside each other. And I said, Suzanne, how are you going to get back home to Adelaide if I didn't turn up? And you're being stalked by this man, you've got no shoes on. Can you start to tell me a bit of this story? Because I've realised at this stage that I'm doing the tipple. I'm doing the typical Farrow-Pryke move. I'm doing the go in for the save at all costs, Make sure they're safe and then ask questions. Literally. Anyone who knows me for 35 or 50 years would back that up. So at this point, I'm like, can you tell me how you were going to get back to Adelaide, by the way? And do you have anywhere for me to stay? He says, well, mate, and I went, and where is your baby? And can you walk me through why this man's calling you? And well, my baby is 3 months. I have 2 older daughters, she says. And I said, oh, how old are you? Do you mind me asking? 29. 3 children at 29, a 3-month-old who's with her mother in Adelaide, Suzanne Maxine Smith. I'm putting it out there into the universe in case anything happens to her, because I'm about to call the authorities. Because what then happened is that she took so many cigarette runs, as addicts do. G'day, Matt Crosby, smoking in the Opera House as the front of house engineer, smoking in the fucking Opera House, as you did. You're so addicted. Addicts, she was off out the front to have a cigarette. So the final boarding call gets called after 4 hours of waiting at Sydney Airport. And I'm heading off into absolutely nowhere that I know of, because I don't know where she lives and I don't know how far from the Adelaide airport it is, and my credit card has got a bee's dick left on it, and my house is for sale because I've got no children and no income, and my house is for sale to try and get my children back with lawyers. So it's all going to be lost, so I'm heading for homelessness myself. But I'm trying to save an Aboriginal woman because I pledged to her to do it. And I ain't no pushover. Just quietly. But so what happens is they announce the boarding call for the flight. And I go into the flight of the Valkyries at this stage. I was like, where is she? And I realised that I don't have her phone number. I gave her mine as soon as she sat down beside me. I said, don't lose me, here's my number. But she didn't give me back hers. She didn't text me hers, and she didn't call me hers. I don't know who's clicked there, but Murrumbidgee Jones, if it's you, You're the only person watching. It's all right. I got the View Insights button that you can click on Facebook here afterwards. I've got the View Insights. I'm averaging 250 and 300 views, and only 1 or 2 people click like. So they're no friends of mine, except for you. So people are perving, and I'm sending this out to ministers, policy advisors, literal ministers, members of parliament, documentary filmmakers, journalists, everything. I want everything I'm saying covered. So don't sit here like a flaneur and just have a lazy perv. Do something. If you are a man who professes to care about women on earth, anywhere, do something. Push this around to people who can make a difference. So she is gone at Sydney Airport with my Italian leather shoes because she asks me for them on her way out to have a cigarette, despite the fact that she's been walking in cut-off black socks, little short like tennis socks, the whole entire time. And I didn't even realise, oh God, I don't want my shoes fouled up by black shit from walking across Sydney. So, yeah, okay, you can, sure, all right, you can have my shoes. And I give her my shoes. And so the final boarding call has been called for Jetstar flight departing at 9:30, so it's 9 o'clock and everyone's boarding and they're in a queue at Sydney Airport at gate 53. And she's nowhere to be seen. I don't have her phone number. She's got mine. I look at my phone. There is no text. There is no phone call. So I'm starting to think, as the logical person would, well, has she gone outside for an hour-long cigarette and then decided to take some of the calls that I said, don't you answer his call, don't you answer his call, because if you do, you are going to give authorities grounds that you're interacting with him at 3 and 4 and 5 a.m. when he's harassing you and calling you and he's threatened to hurt you and harm you and you're going back to your baby in Adelaide. Don't you answer his call. Don't you dare. If there's one thing I've learned, don't you dare ever concede to their terms, because that's what it is in the patriarchy. It's the male violence terms. Don't you, because they will take your children. And then they'll blame you for it. Why were you with him? He was assaulting you. I don't fucking know, you stupid fuckwit. Where did you expect me to go? I couldn't afford housing because I'm a single mother and I've got no job. So where did you expect me to go again? But no. The care system, so-called bullshit, the welfare system, welfare for lawyers and their fucking cushy six-figure a year jobs in their bureaucrat positions. Welfare for everybody except the people who need it. She's already told me by this stage, by the way, when I ask her about the scars on her face, that she's been bashed, broken and blue. She's got a broken femur and she's got a caseworker. And that they're looking out for her and she's got housing. And at this point I'm thinking, fuck, geez, I wish I'd had any of those things. I had to struggle along under the patriarchal tax system of Australia that doesn't provide any childcare affordability to women at all, who raise future taxpayers, and that takes all of our unpaid labour to do so as we also nurse down the old, and doesn't provide any or ensure any housing affordability to anyone, let alone a woman escaping a violent man, etc., 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 as described many times across these broadcasts. So there's a boarding call, and I have the humiliating and, again, degrading, it seems to be the story of my fucking life. It's like there's a neon sign behind my head that just says, kick me. That's how I honestly feel. After everything I've done, for everyone I loved, the men, the children, all of the friends, my family, It's like, kick me. So everyone's boarding, and I'm like, oh my God, what if she doesn't, where is she? And I'm like, I'm walking out, like, I'm going from the desk at Jetstar out into Sydney Gate 53, looking down where she would be coming in from her cigarette, going, is she coming, is she coming? And I'm walking back, and I said, oh, can I talk to you, please, at the Jetstar desk? And they called her, and I said, look, I've got a very complex situation on my hand. I'm literally trying to deliver a South Australian woman 6 murders in 1 month. I didn't bother saying that to them because I figure that they don't care, actually, because they're like so many Australian, 60% voting against the referendum. They don't care. They want to know. As long as they're fine, it's all fine. So I don't bother lecturing them. I just said, I've got a woman who's escaping domestic violence and she's seriously, her life is in danger. And I said, this ticket is going through to Katie Gallagher, the Minister for Women, because I'm going to start billing the fucking patriarchy for what it costs us to escape you. To escape your murders and your violence, you fucking assholes. Your budgets that don't provide for free childcare and affordable housing for single mothers. How dare you? How dare you? This is going to Katie Gallagher. Yeah, stick your ticket right in the Minister for Women and pay this woman back for having to flee the violence of a man. And make it tax deductible while you're at it. And I say to her, I don't know what to do if she doesn't show up, what happens? And they go, well, we can refund your ticket now before the plane leaves. So I have to choose. Because as the old saying goes, no good deed shall go unpunished. Right? The irony. No good deed shall go unpunished. So I have to choose whether I believe she's going to turn up from the fag with my shoes and her bag gone, and I haven't heard from her. And I check my phone again and there's no text, there's no phone call. I mean, she could have texted and said, I'm just coming in from that cigarette now. I've seen the boarding call. And I've gone to the manager of the flight and I've gone, I'm in this vexed situation. I've explained the situation of her and fleeing domestic violence. And I said, I'm on a pension and I've paid my last money on earth to try to save her, right? And can I, like, what happens if she doesn't turn up? And then, like, well, you can get it back now if you want. Well, I don't want anything. What I want has very rarely got to do with the outcome of anything on this planet. What I want, clearly. So I was forced to choose to get a refund or to hope that she would turn up in the next, like the queues actually boarding the plane. And I said, look, I booked the tickets in the airport this morning on my credit card and we bought 2 names. And she said, can you give me your credit card? So I hand over my credit card. She types it all into the system. She sees my ID. She goes, yeah, I can see that here. I can refund you $880. And I went, more importantly, can you find me her phone number? Because I'm pretty sure that I wrote in her phone number on her part of the ticket that she got when I walked to the gates and said, this is not a traditional owner of Australia. This is an actual owner of Australia and we're taking her home. And so would you please allow us on? And no one told us that we weren't allowed to get on with shoes, but at this point at the gate, they tell us we weren't allowed to get on with shoes and she's got no shoes and I've lent her mine. So there's 2 tickets and 1 pair of shoes, I think, until I remember later that I actually had another pair of shoes from Manly Local Court yesterday. Anyway, she's nowhere to be seen. There's no messages, there's no phone calls, there's nothing. So I've got to choose, do I want to lose $885? And she might have spoken and finally taken a call while she was having her hour-long cigarette out the front of Sydney Airport. And she might have taken the call and decided to go back to the man who was abusing her and taken my shoes. And decided that she had the actual boarding pass so she could take that ticket and change it to another date. And I don't know. But the line's moving along and the plane is boarding. So I have to make a line call, don't I? I'm out on technicality of morality. And so I get my money back. And guess what? She reappears. At the exact moment I was refunded, she reappears. As fate would have it, timing, timing, timing. So I say, oh, she's here. Can we just get those tickets back? And they say, no. Cancelled. Sorry. Game over. We have to know who's loading onto the aeroplane. You were cancelled off it. No. But you can go out and buy tickets for later on in the day. I haven't slept. Which is like yesterday's broadcast by the beach in the wind. It's so shabby as well. It's like not only did I sing and not warm up and do an Etta James guttural belt out, but I also hadn't slept. And if there's one thing that will fuck your vocal cords, if you're a singer, you will know this. It's the deprivation of sleep. Worse than smoking. And at this point, she realises that there's no flight unless we book another one. And so she just turns around despondently and starts to walk off. No thank you, no attempt like, what do we do now? She doesn't come in and say, oh, what do we do now? Should we book another flight? And I'm like, where were you? You know, I've booked a flight to Adelaide to rescue you away from this man who's going to kill you. Where were you? But she's already giving me the 1,000-yard stare. She's already going, too good to be true. White woman holds my hand, takes me away from the danger, takes me to a drink, gets me in a cab, takes me to Sydney Airport, buys me a ticket, buys me breakfast, walks me to the place. We're about to get on the plane and it still doesn't happen because, again, the power of addiction is such that, and or her addiction to or wanting to speak to her people in Adelaide, it could have been, I don't know, because I didn't have her phone number. I gave her mine, she never gave me hers. And I booked the tickets, so the airline ticket's in my name. So I can't call her and go, are you coming back in from that addictive cigarette that you're having outside of Sydney Airport right now while I'm trying to rescue you back to Adelaide? But she does manage to tell me, as I said, I think, that she's got support workers and women's housing and her child's with her mother, but she's come back up to Sydney. And so I finally asked the obvious questions. How were you going to get back to Adelaide if I didn't show up? Sitting on the side of Sydney Central train station waiting for a train. She doesn't answer. Maybe she was going to get a train back. But you know what the worst part is out of all of that, after failing to deliver my promise to this woman to deliver her back into the arms of safety, away from a man who could have killed her, who was the father of her child. The worst part is she just starts to walk off through Sydney Airport. Wordlessly. Oh yeah, another whitey, another bullshit broken promise. But she's got my leather shoes on. My Italian flat leather shoes on. The only things that I actually can schlep around in these days that are comfortable, given that I'm carrying 20 kilos both from menopause and what the New South Wales health system negligently did to me, sticking me on medication that was completely inappropriate for a hysterectomy and a nervous breakdown. I'm carrying 20 kilos on a 5'7" frame. I've gone from literally 58 kilos, from 57 kilos, sorry, to 75. So I'm carrying 18 kilos of weight on these joints that have never had to. And so I like flat shoes, and I've got some nice Italian shoes, and she's rocking off into the distance with my shoes. And she hasn't turned around to see if I'm beside her. And she hasn't turned around to say, oh, should we catch a train instead, or should we buy another ticket? She hasn't turned around and say nothing. So at this point, I'm figuring she's thinking, oh, well, at least I got a good pair of shoes from Whitey. And she's walking off, and I'm like, hang on. Would you mind if I get my shoes back? Because by this stage, I forgot to say, I'd already gone up to the Bonds shop and Seed, which is for children, so I knew that they were never going to deliver, and a news agency, and looked for a pair of thongs because the director at Jetstar had said, well, we're not going to let you on the plane without any shoes, so you better get her a pair of shoes. So in her absence, I've run around trying to buy her shoes. Anyway, she walked off into the day after giving me my shoes back and looking at me like I was the fuckwit. After Paul Roper, who I thought was a cool guy who owns El Rocco up at King's Cross, had allowed me to be criticised for my bra. This dude with a flaccid gut and his grey crazy hair spinning out like, you know, some 1970s rock star, and then a fading old sailor's tattoo on his arms, had the temerity when I came up to Paul at the end of the night of blues singing at El Rocco and said, oh, do you mind if I grab my things back? And he goes, you know the problem with you, love? This is not Paul Roper. This is the fuckwit he was talking to over the other side of the bar. The only one person who bought a drink all night, except for me 3 weeks ago buying the entire band drinks all night because they were so broke as musicians that the disability support pensioners buying the boys the drinks. Fucking can't make this shit up. It's all explained below in other videos as well. So this guy says, you know, your bra's ugly. That's the problem with your outfit. And I just turn around. I'm 52. And then they don't call it the menopause because of your estrogen cessation, diminishment. We call it the menopause, or everyone who's in it, and I mean everyone who's in it calls it the menopause because it should be called the menocancellation. It's not that we're pausing you, men. It's that you're fucking had it. We are so sick of the adultery, the less pay, the murder twice a week in democratic nations, the GDP spends that go on everything except childcare that would actually help us to earn a living, just the equivalent to you. And the fucking egotism and the mendacity. We're sick of it. So it's the menopause. It's the stop. Stopping you. And every woman just goes, not the menopause, we're pausing them. We won't be coming back. I'm grateful. No sex for me for the rest of the time. I've had my fill. Jill, but seriously, she walks off into Sydney Airport in her socks, away into the faceless day, the friendless, faceless, moneyless day. Because she never did answer the question of how she was going to get back home to Adelaide unless I bought her the ticket. And I never got to say why I went to family court yesterday. Not family, sorry, Manly local court. So many courts, I get them all conflated. Manly local court. It wasn't just because my father sued my single mother, NIDA graduate, incredible singing sister Natasha Farrow-Pryke. Look it up. Look her up. Because she's had 16 million views on YouTube from singing a song called Calling to the Night. Natasha Farrow. Japanese gaming console theme song. Very popular. She should have done a $1 per play deal. She would have been worth 16 million bucks, but no, she got screwed. She just got some shit, couple $100 fee, and now it's one of the most popular songs in the gaming sites of Japan. Natasha Farrow, and she's a single mum whose little boy's father, little boy Rod Dry's son, Spike Farrow-Pryke, who did a film with Rachel Griffiths recently. She's starving out the back of Tamworth, with her son's father dying and her father suing her in the Manly local court. So I took him to the court, not just because of that, but because he called my mother, and I quote, the town bike. And he sent that email to me, and my mother was the most chaste. I'm laughing because you can't make this shit up. She was the most chaste, asexual, Parkinson's suffering, stuck at home with 3 children while he fucked other women. Woman that you would ever meet, an angel. And so on the 4th anniversary of her death, while I was stuck in lockdown, he emails me and says, where's your sister? We're suing her for $40,000, or you can, if you tell her, ask where she is, tell her she can settle this week for $25,000. I phone him up, start politely asking him if he's true and not crazy. He tells me that it's even worse than that he actually is suing her. And then I hang up and I phone their lawyers and I say, if you don't cease and desist, I'm going to broadcast to every single person they know that they're suing their single mother, homeless daughter. So they said they'd cease and desist through NSW lawyers in DY. And that was in April 2020. So in June 2020, after 3 months of me being stuck in the first COVID-19 border closure, I get an email from them at the very minute of my mother's last breath. And this brought the house down yesterday in Manly Court, let me tell you, because every single person went, They literally, there was not one person in the room that didn't gasp when I told the magistrate, Dennis was her name, Attorney General of New South Wales, Michael Daly, she'll be reported, in her grandiosity. As the entire court drew its breath when I informed them that I had received an email at 10 to 10 on the 14th of June 2020, which was the exact moments that my mother drew her last breath 4 years prior in 2016, calling her the town bike. And lying just completely venal, absolute horseshit about my mother, who everybody knew to be the gentlest, kindest, most chaste, embarrassed person, whereas my dad's got porno everywhere and he's got his cock out down at Lady Jane and Reef Beach at Manly. That's how I was going to start my deposition, by the way. Oh, it's very good that we're at Manly today, Your Honour, because this is right around the corner from Lady Jane and Reef Beach, where my father, Leslie John Farrow-Pryke, had his cock out for quite a lot of his life, roasting it while he left my mother and her 3 daughters, me, at home, ignoring us all weekend so he could roast his cock down at the nude beach. You can't make this shit up. So when I said to Manly local court yesterday that this is all going to be written down into a film, by the way. So many scenes, so little time. When I said that this is what he did, when I said, well, you would think that given the only time I've seen my children in the last year was for 4 hours on Christmas Day, and I still chose to drive them to the northern beaches, and even though I didn't go anywhere near my father, My children walked in with gifts for him and also a copy of the Sydney Morning Herald because my daughter Alice Farrow-Pryke had achieved first place in 5 subjects in the 2022 HSC. 5. Equal first with other people. She had achieved equal first across 5 subjects in last year's HSC from the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, and I knew that my didactic father would be proud, and he put a lot of time into her as a loving grandparent 19 years ago, 18 and a half. And so I tried to honour my father's memory by choosing to believe that he was more than what he'd ended up as at the end of his life, which is a right-wing nut job suing his own single-parent sister Natasha for back rent. I chose to honour him in my memory, as he always was to me, my hero. And so I bought my children gifts of photos of each of them and got them properly framed. Augie and Maddie in one and Alice in another. And she was under the harbour bridge in a beautiful dress going to her formal with her gorgeous partner, Liam, at the time. And then my 2 children holding framed paintings on canvas by Saquon Tran, one of the greatest artists in Australia, whose entire family, his twin sister, his mother and his father and his grandmother were murdered by the Khmer Rouge when he was 6. Life is suffering. The Buddhists, the only religion to get anywhere near right, except for their reincarnation bullshit. The Buddhists got that part right. Life is suffering. So I gave them my father. I sent my children inside and it took all the time in the world to drive them from Sydney to the northern beaches and back. So all the time I was going to get to spend with them where I could have just hung around and taken them for a swim. I chose to take them up to my father just to dignify him for the work that he'd put in to me over the years. To say thank you, Dad, because you didn't get to have the life you wanted in the end. Merry Christmas. But not before the entire of the Manly local court gasped in shock and disgust properly when I said what he did, which is at 10 to 10 in the morning on the 14th of June 2020, 4 years after my mother had died, to the day he sent me an email lying about her and calling her filth, and she was not ever. So this was just literally vengeance, because I'd said, well, you're suing my sister, so if you're going to do that, I'm going to tell everybody you know. And I sent that to their WMW lawyers at DY. So they said, we will cease and desist because you are causing our clients great grief. And I went, no, let's get it straight. They are causing me and my sister great grief, and they're fucking loaded, and she has nothing out the back of Tamworth, and she should have an EGOT, an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar and a Tony. So let's get this fucked up system straight. And so they said they'd cease and desist, but 1.5 years later, on the 17th of December 2021, in the Manly local court, I read from Google that they were pursuing her again. And the way that I found that out is I was totally alone on Christmas Day in 2021 in Elizabeth Bay, and not one of the fathers of my children put my phone calls through to my children. And my family was suing each other, so I lay there all day and I wanted to die. So I Googled Farrow-Pryke. Lo and behold, 17th December 2021, Leslie John Farrow-Pryke and Wendy Starkey versus Natasha Farrow-Pryke, a.k.a. Gilbert Knight, because that was been my mother's maiden name. So they dishonoured in bad faith, which is bad in the law, isn't it? In the eyes of the law, they dishonoured what they said they'd do. They said they'd cease and desist, but as soon as they thought I wasn't looking anymore, they reignited their case and started suing her again. So I went, now you're really fucked. You fucked with me once. I phoned you and you gave me your hyperbolic bullshit about her. And you told me it was worse than I thought. So I issued a writ to your lawyers and they said you'd cease and desist on condition that I did not contact any of your golfing buddies and your neighbours and tell them that you were suing your homeless daughter, single mother sister, my single mother sister, their homeless daughter. And so then they started again in bad faith. It's called WMW Lawyers. It's called Bad Faith. Maybe that'll be the name of the book, eh? But I can't be bothered writing this shit down. No one will want to hear this. It is shit. So now I get to feel, at the end of this broadcast, triply fucked. Because despite the announcement today of the Royal Commission into Violence of the Murder of Women by Men in South Australia, yesterday morning, a South Australian woman whose femur had been broken, whose face had been bashed, she told me as we sat there. And I said, if you don't leave here now and if you ever go back to him, welfare will steal your child. Don't you ever call him again. But she disappeared, like I said, out the front of Sydney Airport for an hour, and I don't know whether she was calling him and deciding she'd change her ticket to a later date to go and see him again because everyone was boarding the flight and I had to make a call. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, aren't you? So I'm finishing now. This goes out to all the people who ever try and help. To hope against hope. She walked off into the crowd. I got my leather flat shoes back. But I needed them because I can't buy another $180 pair of leather flat shoes on the dole, on the pension. I got them back. She didn't even turn around her head and look at me, say thanks. Not like I wanted to be, but it was just like, well, I mean, I don't know, you were outside and not in the airport. The plane was boarding and you had my number and I didn't have yours, which of course is the first thing that I asked the director of Jetstar to do at the gate was, could you please look up my ticket? Here it is. No, before you cancel it, can you just see her phone number so I can call her now and see if she's coming into the terminal? Her number wasn't there. I could have sworn it was because we had to give a phone number for each ticket, right? Anyway, I'm done. This world is too sad. Like Tracy Chapman sang on her brilliant second album, New Beginnings, start all over. Look that song up. And if you've got a beautiful hi-fi system like I once did, play it. Because another song of hers on that album said, say it, say it, say it. Tell it like it is. She's one of my many heroines, Tracy Chapman, long live you. So I will be going now. But yeah, did bring the house down yesterday, as every single person in the gallery waiting for their trial found out that my father wrote an email to me at the very moment of my mother's death 4 years later, calling her a bike, when she was the most chaste and prudish and long-suffering person on earth, and just invented horse shit, and he did it to poison me. He did it to poison me because I said, don't you dare sue my sister, don't you dare, or I'll tell everyone what you're doing, who you know. And so very calculatingly, from April 2020, June, they waited 12 weeks and then sent the poison dart into my heart. What a life, eh?